Some of the most interesting countries are among the least well known, like Timor-Leste, or Kyrgyzstan, or New Zealand, but that's nothing. Some of the world's most influential countries no longer exist. For one reason or another, they just disappeared, be it due to foreign invasion or societal collapse. Some were short-lived ideological experiments of the Cold War, others were great powers that lasted for centuries. Two centuries ago, Peru and Bolivia were part of the same massive country. Not long before, most of South America was ruled by Spain, who organized the territory into various viceroys. Spain's viceroys were massive and poorly defined, grouping together disparate native ethnic groups. It's like the Spanish are the only people worse at setting borders than the British. So when they lost control of South America, it was unclear what territory should be part of what country. In this chaos, multiple new nations emerged, among them North Peru, South Peru and Bolivia. Then in 1836, the president of Bolivia united them by force, creating the Peru-Bolivian Confederation. He now controlled massive territory, and South America had a country strong enough to rival any of its neighbours. But this would be her downfall. Seeing the new country as a threat, Chile and Argentina declared war on her. Within a year, Argentina was defeated, but Chile kept fighting, eventually invading and partitioning them into Peru and Bolivia. The Confederation had lasted just 3 years, but its legacy still affects the politics of South America today. Just decades later, Chile again went to war with Peru and Bolivia, taking coastal territory from both. These wars left Bolivia landlocked, something they have never forgiven Chile for. India is known for its enormous population, but one of her 29 states is tiny. That state is Sikkim, a small patch of land sandwiched between India and China. Until 1975, Sikkim was an independent kingdom ruled by a priest king. The Buddhist monarchy had ruled it since 1642, at times only narrowly avoiding being absorbed by Nepal. Because of this, Sikkim agreed to become a British client state in return for protection. Then in 1950 they did the same with India, fearing China would annex Sikkim just as they had Tibet. In 1967, Chinese forces moved into Sikkim, and although the Indian army quickly drove them out, it really scared locals. Before long, the people of Sikkim decided to become part of India and abolish their monarchy. Vermont is one of America's smaller states, but is nonetheless powerful, being ruled by a 900-year-old wizard. Yet strangely, there was a time when Vermont was not part of the US. After the American Revolution, Vermont was not officially made a state, as it was still seen as part of New York. So to assert their rights, local officials declared independence from the United States. They drew up a constitution, established a currency, and even abolished slavery, which in 1777 was a big deal. They even established diplomatic relations with France and the Netherlands. At one point they were in talks with Quebec to rejoin the British Empire. Those talks came to nothing, but all of this gained Vermont a new respect. In 1791, Vermont joined the US as its 14th state, after 22 years of independence. Asia's Ryukyu Islands are today part of Japan, but for hundreds of years they were an independent kingdom. In the 15th century, its royal family emerged on the island of Okinawa, unifying Okinawa under their rule. As the birthplace of karate, the island has long been known for the strength of its warriors, so in due time they conquered most other Ryukyu islands. But they were a small and relatively weak state, so they agreed to become a tributary state, first to China and later to Japan. Still, the Sho kings continued to rule the islands. Thanks to the strategic position of their islands, they built extensive trade links, gaining vast wealth. Its strategic value can be seen in the fact that 32 American military bases are on Okinawa today. In 1879, Japan officially annexed Ryukyu and overthrew its royal family. But locals never forgot when the Sho family ruled Okinawa. Their descendants still live there, and so does Mr. Miyagi. Napoleon. He was a funny little duck, but there was a time when he was the most powerful man in Europe. So after he was defeated and removed from power, Napoleon's enemies gave him an incredible gift. They created a new country for him, the Principality of Elba. In 1814, he was made monarch of this tiny island just off the Italian coast. Here he ruled over a population of 12,000. In truth, it was a prison where Napoleon had been sent into exile, but it was still a real country, and he ran it as such, designing a flag, organizing a military, and writing a constitution. It was a great life, but Napoleon couldn't take it. He had been ruler of Europe, and this small island simply wasn't enough for him. So after just 10 months, he abandoned the island to rebuild an army and conquer France. So when he was defeated again, the Principality of Elba was dissolved. For much of its history, Italy was not one united country, but a collection of small independent states. Among the most successful was Venice. Built on a swampy lagoon, it's quite surprising Venice even exists, but their swampy surroundings protected Venice from invaders, leaving them free to build a new society. They built a republic, with an elected doge acting as head of state. This turned out to be one of history's most stable political systems. Thanks to the location of Venice, local merchants could easily sail anywhere in the Mediterranean. Wealth and resources flooded into the city, as it connected the markets of inland Europe with maritime trading routes. Venice used this peace and prosperity to expand. They built a navy and began capturing territory along the coast of Dalmatia. This effectively gave them control of the Adriatic Sea. More and more lands became Venetian territory, but they almost exclusively took lands that extended Venetian trade links. Venice was now the dominant merchant power of the Mediterranean. But then another Italian city-state with vast wealth of their own declared war on Venice. After 100 years of war, Venice and Genoa made peace, but by now they had outlived the years of their glory and faded away. Over the centuries, many flags have flown over Taiwan. That's how she became known as Formosa, a Portuguese name meaning beautiful island. But European rule in Taiwan was short-lived. From 1662 to 1895, the island was part of China. Then Japan forced China to cede it to them. But the islanders themselves weren't ready to become part of Japan, so they declared their own country, the Republic of Formosa. At the time, it was the only democratic republic in Asia, with officials elected by the people. They issued their own currency and stamps, and had this amazing-looking tiger flag. The republic even had a military, boasting over 100,000 soldiers. But this wasn't good enough. As the first industrialized power of Asia, Japan made short work of Formosa, ending the republic after just 5 months. If you think the last country was short-lived, this one lasted less than a day. In 1931, left-wing revolutionaries declared independence in the Iberian region of Galicia. To them, it was the start of a new republic, but in reality, their new country lasted 5 hours. It literally existed for 5 hours. So why did they think it would work? Well, Galician nationalism has been going strong for centuries, thanks to it once being an independent kingdom. The Kingdom of Galicia was founded by Germanic barbarians, who took the land from Rome. There was a time when half of Spain was ruled by the kingdom, but before long, other barbarians pushed them back to Galicia, where they largely kept to themselves. Tibet is a historical region now mostly controlled by China, but until 1951 she was an independent country. As a theocratic absolute monarchy, Tibet was ruled by a Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhists. Tibet was a very traditional and inward-looking society, but that was okay for most of the early 20th century, as China was distracted by its own civil war. Then in 1950, China's Communist Party won the war and took full control in China. 1 year later, they invaded Tibet and removed the teenage Dalai Lama from power. Ever since then, the area has been incorporated as part of China. China needs Tibet for its strategic importance. As a vast mountainous region, she acts as a buffer zone between them and India. India remains the only serious long-term power rival to China, and allowing Tibet to fall under their influence would pose a serious threat. That's why India granted political asylum to the Dalai Lama. It's also why huge numbers of ethnic Chinese have been moved into Tibet, to replace its population with dedicated Han. Knowing this, it's hard to see how Tibet could ever become independent once more. Before the Peru-Bolivian Confederation, there was another South American superstate. That was Gran Colombia, covering territory of modern-day Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, Guyana, and Brazil. Led by Venezuelan revolutionary Simón Bolívar, it was South America's most powerful country. Bolívar founded Gran Colombia to be a highly centralized state, where the government would be all-powerful, unlike America's federal system. He dreamed of liberating all of South America to form one great nation. So Gran Colombia invaded Peru, which was still under Spanish control. Before long, Peru was also free, and Bolívar wanted to absorb it into Gran Colombia. Now Gran Colombia drew up a new constitution. It abolished slavery, guaranteed free and fair trial, and guaranteed freedom of the press. But then everything went wrong. Gran Colombia was too big, and regional division began to show. People in Peru simply didn't see themselves as the same as Colombians. Peru rebelled, as did Venezuela, and in a matter of years the entire country was torn apart.